We tested a new iteration of the page and yes, literally saw almost a 50% improvement in our conversion there, which drove our CAC down substantially, which also helps us fuel growth because then we can reinvest that in the business and keep kind of fueling the growth of the company.
Welcome to LaunchPod, the show from LogRocket, where we sit down with top product and digital leaders. Today, we're joined by Michael Krafft, CPO at FoundersCard, a membership community for entrepreneurs and executives offering exclusive perks and VIP treatment. Michael previously worked in investment banking, led product teams at American Express, and played a key role in turning around Alight, an HR tech firm ahead of its IPO. In this episode, we discuss how Michael uses AI to be a one-person product team at a profitable startup with over 250,000 members, his AI-driven discovery engine that automates interviews, segments users, and turns feedback into roadmap-shaping insights, why working as both product leader and IC lets him move from idea to prototype to product in record time with tools like V-Zero and Lovable, and the simple test that boosted paid conversions by 50%, and how he runs growth experiments far beyond his team's size. So here's our episode with Michael Krafft. All right, Michael, hey man, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I think this will be a fun one. You're an interesting kind of case study in polar opposites, right? You started out in iBanking and finance. You went to business school. I think you're the first person I've met who went to business school and ended up out of finance after starting there. At American Express, you moved into product. You've managed teams of 70 PMs, 35 PMs, all hundreds of people over your career. But I think the thing I really want to dig into with you right now and start with is you've kind of gone back to the roots a little bit, and you're at a company called FoundersCard where you are it's a 15-person company, and you are the entire product team.
That's right. I'm a one-person chief product officer product team at FoundersCard.
Yeah, I love this because you hear so many people talking about online, this buzz of like, have we seen already the inception of the first, one-person company that's going to be $1 billion company, or all these wild claims about what AI is allowing people to do. You guys aren't quite one person. I think that might be hyperbole, but like 15 people, it sounds like you guys are doing a lot, getting a lot of impact with a lean team. So give us like the TLDR. What does FoundersCard do, and what drew you in from this career of kind of large enterprises to come back and say, I'm gonna do it myself, man?
Sure. FoundersCard is a premium membership subscription where members get access to loyalty status and really good preferred pricing, really good rates on travel benefits, airline, hotels, car rentals, as well as a suite of business benefits, lifestyle benefits. And so generally speaking, we say entrepreneurs and those that are entrepreneurially minded are attracted to our product. This company, yes, it's a 15-person company, very profitable and generally pretty great growth company. And as I was sort of looking at my options, found this company, and I've sort of been attracted to this type of company over the years, where, and I think I've been known for coming in and helping drive growth and also drive the modernization of a platform. And here was a company where I sort of deeply understood the business model. I'd spent 10 years at American Express, so sort of in an adjacent space. I'd spent time in fintech and consumer tech, and felt that even though the team was really lean, that I could come in and add a ton of value. And, I didn't feel like I had to have a team of 35 people or 70 people in order to drive impact, because I was confident in my AI skills, which I had sort of honed on the side a little bit. And so, that kind of was why I thought that this would be a great opportunity for me. I joined about 6 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely feel you on that. I've been at everything from, one of the first 10 people early on, actually here at LogRocket, up to I've been at several thousand-person companies running, large teams and in charge of huge initiatives. And what I liked about the small companies and that kind of, right at the very beginning, couple, handful of people, was you do something, you can see the impact of that in the overall results of the company. But it was just a lot of grindy, kind of the mind-numbing stuff that you had to do back then that you did because, you had to and you wanted to see the outcome. But I think that's where, and I'm kind of jealous of where you're at right now, is like with some of the gains in AI, it presents the opportunity to, you can't offload all of that, but a lot of that can be sped up and you can do a lot more of the impact stuff. So maybe let's just look at this a little bit, right? And like it is a founder-led company, is a scrappy startup, chance to get back to the basics a little bit here. How did you come in and look at the company and say, here's where we need to apply like this high leverage but high skill level amount of kind of work as well?
Yeah, coming into the company, I think as a product leader, even though, technically I'm an IC with no team, as a product leader, you still have a responsibility to come in and help, clarify and crystallize the vision and the strategy, the product strategy. So there was a bunch of work that we needed to do there. Come in and also, make sure that we were gathering as many customer insights as we could. And so I think one of my initial priorities was around how do we turn on the engine or the flywheel for just kind of auto generating customer insights and surveys, and then also just trying to clarify the roadmap. I think the company had done a really great job of sort of smaller optimizations around the acquisition funnel and on the product, but I think where they needed somebody to come in was to really help them figure out how do we drive stepwise change in their product experience and their member experience. And I think that's where, in order to drive retention and acquisition, and that's where coming in as a seasoned product leader, sort of, I was able to kind of know what the steps were to kind of drive that strategy and also some of the execution. And as I know we're going to talk about, really use AI to kind of move very quickly on gathering a lot of that and putting together a lot of that, those inputs myself.
That's the thread I think we don't want to miss here is, it's when you come in as a senior leader early on like that, it's funny because when you're one person team, you don't escape the responsibility of having to inform and help, your founder and the other leaders go forward and figure out the strategic ways that you are going to, shift the company. If they just wanted to ship a couple, product things, or they just want support in product, that founding team would hire the junior PMs that we're all used to. But when you bring in a leader in any function, it really is, you can't escape the strategic impact you have to have to come in, and the large, macro step function impact you have to have. But then you also get to kind of, do the micro stuff and implement it and see the fruits of that labor. So let's start there. I guess you came in and like the foundations of, figuring out where you're going are just how do you even listen? How do you do customer discovery? This guy, Ajay Desway, who's, a great thought leader in product. He spoke at Mind the Product recently. He's been on the podcast. He joins us around the country in these networking dinners for product leaders we put on, has talked about, this kind of imbalance in speeds across teams. And while engineering teams have greatly sped up from the help of AI, it seems like kind of discovery and customer listening and all that we're still generating ways to speed that up a little bit more and kind of break this imbalance. So let's start there. Like, how did you kind of come in and build this engine that allowed you to have meetings, meet customers, listen, synthesize, build roadmap, all without that supporting team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, scarcity sort of drives the ingenuity because, I think initially I spent a few weeks sort of doing a diagnostic of, where we were and sort of where we wanted to be. Of course, I have ChatGPT as sort of my co-pilot going back and forth and helping to diagnose some of the issues. But there was a huge opportunity at the company to gather a lot more customer insights. And that was through interviews, NPS, surveys. We didn't really have a lot of that. And so part of it was realizing that if I was going to do this customer research in any sort of scalable way, I had to drive automation. It's sort of, how do I use tools like Calendly and HubSpot and AI to sort of craft surveys to sort of auto set up interviews. So I set up a ton of different customer interviews and I could test different levels of, do I pay them $50, $75, $100, that kind of thing. And so I was able to sort of auto set up a lot of interviews with customers. I was writing surveys that, again, I was using a lot of AI to generate those surveys and send those out. And ultimately, I ended up focusing on a group of users who were on our Elite product, which is kind of the main product that we monetize at FoundersCard. And the reason there was I didn't want to boil the ocean, but I knew that a major strategic priority for us was driving more acquisition and retention on our main product. So focused on those users. We did not have at the time a great, behavioral segmentation or customer personas. And so all the while that I was meeting with customers, I was making sure that I was capturing those transcripts, cranking those through ChatGPT. I was gathering survey data. I was looking at Trustpilot reviews, Google reviews, and using AI to sort of pull in all of these disparate data sources and the interviews to construct a behavioral segmentation of these users that we had. And then through, going back and forth using AI a lot, that behavioral segmentation, we knew kind of the needs and pain points of these different segments that we had. And that could inform, opportunities and roadmap. And again, it's sort of me going back and forth with the AI tools to sort of figure out what is going to drive the most impact, prioritization, and sort of ultimately turn that into the roadmap and things that we're building, which now has turned into features that we're building.
Right. So am I right in kind of guessing it started with some surveys that you sent out to target members? As they responded and you answered those, they could book time for further feedback with Calendly, or was there more than that there?
Yeah, 100%. And we, I had an idea of creating what we call the member advisory circle. So one of the last questions in every survey, at every NPS, we set up a NPS survey that would go out to all members after 30 days. And I added a question of, would you like to join our member advisory circle? And so a lot of people opted into that, which was great because then I had a group of people who didn't mind getting emailed about research and surveys because, like many subscription businesses, FoundersCard, there's this delicate balance when it comes to emailing your members. If you email them too much, they might they may cancel their service. So identifying users who were keen on giving us feedback was really a great insight that we kind of had. And now I've built a set of about 200 users, and always know.
That's a lot.
Yeah, well, right. But it's not our product is a really good product. I think it's a little bit of some people have challenges with a little bit of benefit discovery. Our strength is also our Achilles heel. We have so many benefits that sometimes people maybe don't sort of see what all of those are. But we have people that are very passionate about our product, which is great. And something that when I think about joining a new company is this a product that many people already love and that you have a product market fit for? So identifying those users who can, provide good feedback and don't mind getting emailed, every couple of weeks with a survey or an interview request is amazing. And the fact that we have these NPS surveys that go out every 30 days and ask this question, would you like to join our member advisory circle, is a way that I'm constantly adding to this list of people that want to participate and give us feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think two things there. One is that's always been a huge red flag for me, is if I'm looking at a new company and I can't find evidence of users that really love the product, or they can't even at least talk to me about and maybe help introduce me to a couple users or customers who are really just infatuated with and love what they're doing. That's kind of red flag number one. Unless I think I can come in and really influence the product itself, that's worrying to me. But what I think is really cool here is everyone, I think, looks at these, how do I start using AI to magnify my impact? And they think you have to have it through every step and I got to start with AI you are, MPS has been around forever, for a long time. HubSpot and sending out those emails and surveys and allowing people to book time in Calendly. While I love Calendly, it is not some new thing that is really disrupting our workflows right now. What kind of the magic happens after that, right? You can get, because you have these users who love the product, you can pull them in, but the problem becomes if you talk to 200 people every year, let's say you talk to each of them, or you talk to half of them, even 100, you're not gonna be able to synthesize and pull data from all of that and regularly go back and pull insights when you need it or aggregate it well. But the fuel, there's no AI magic in getting the fuel there. It's what you do with it once you have it.
Yeah. And there's AI and then there's just simple automation, right? And I think in a prior role, I would have said, okay, well, I need to have my UX researcher, and the UX researcher is going to reach out to people. And no, you can do this all yourself. And I think, one of the things that I think about is, I've led some decent sized product and design teams, and, now technically, yes, I am an IC, but Does that mean that I'm sort of functioning at like a junior PM level? Definitely not. I think the fact that, I do think quite broadly about, how do I drive impact? I understand the drivers of the business. I understand what we need to do to drive features that our users will love, and kind of connecting all of those dots. It makes me quite effective and efficient, like using these different tools to, help us get where we want to go in a pretty efficient way. It's just not necessarily how I've operated over the last,
Right.
5 or 7 years. I've been a product VP at a bunch of different companies like Amex and Alight.
Right. And like, at Amex, you're going to have a team, right? I don't think anyone's saying you're going to have a company the size of Amex with a single VP of product and that's it. But
No.
I do think it will be interesting over the next, several years to see how far this model can be pushed, and some of that stuff that you would have historically just gone, all right, well, in my case, I'm going to have some like, entry level marketer reach out or configure something to send that. Like the light work is configuring to send a regular cadence of surveys, or the MPS is what you do with it. And when you have that interview, you can probably pull so much more on your end. So like, okay, so we are at the point where we've pulled, you've talked to these people, you've gotten recordings, I assume. Where does it kind of go from there to turn, that dozens of conversations into actionable outputs that can impact and drive FoundersCard forward?
Yeah, and I think I kind of hinted a little bit at this before, where you are taking all of this disparate data, which includes all needs and pain points, and as you can imagine, the AI is quite good, even if you're just dumping in Trustpilot reviews, sort of understanding who people are, and people do provide some pretty lengthy comments, especially in our NPS surveys, when you give them kind of free form text fields that, some people will write some nice things and some people write some not nice things. But I think the key to having the behavioral segmentation is that allows you to make sure that you're targeting your features and your product strategy around the users that you care about most, and who are going to be the highest value for you as a company. So for us, those are generally people who are interested in, premium luxury travel, generally who are small business owners themselves, but who can sort of take advantage of the whole set of products that we offer. And then, you do have a lot of people who kind of sign up and then they maybe attrite because they were only there for one benefit and it wasn't as good as they thought, or they say, oh, I had it on my credit card. So the point of bringing up all of this with the behavioral segmentation, make sure you're focusing on the right set of users, and then understanding their needs and pain points, and then solving their problems. And so, the AI is very good. Obviously, you're going to be thinking about how to solve their problems yourself, but the AI is also very good at prompting you for, lists of ideas of things that you can do, especially if you are identifying those needs and pain points, not just listening to what they're saying, but really kind of solving their problem, maybe with something that they didn't think about. And I'll give you one example. So at a company like FoundersCard, benefit discovery is one of the biggest challenges that people have. So they come onto our site, we have, over 500 benefits. How it's not reasonable to think that somebody's going to sit there and just sit here with all the filters and understand all the benefits. So one of the things that we are building, which is our first real AI feature, is an AI concierge. And this AI concierge is a conversational AI. So imagine having ChatGPT sitting at the top of your, at your page once you've logged in, and it prompts you for things that you can do. For example, do you want to enroll in your elite tier benefits? Do you want to, get a present for your wife for Mother's Day? Do you want to travel to Sydney, Australia? And so by providing that sort of conversational AI interface, we believe that users will be able to much more easily sort of digest and understand and access the benefits that we offer. And again, nobody asked for that specifically, but that came from the needs and pain points analysis of sort of, you guys have so much stuff, I don't know how to deal with it. And sort of, I think the AI can sort of help you in some of your brainstorming there. So that is sort of the main feature that I'm working on launching in the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks.
And that's where I think, like the main goal of product, and I've said this over and over again, is not creating software. It's what are the user's problems and how are you solving them? And in this case, you guys at FoundersCard have a lot of different ways to solve problems because it's a lot of functionality. So how do you kind of help people discover that? And, looking back to, you have the surveys, you have feedback interviews you did. one thing I found kind of, ChatGPT is my choice of tool, but you can use any of the LLMs, is really good at, is kind of, you can feed in 20, 30, 50 of those interviews
100%.
and ask it to output, aggregate the similar problems, or like kind of group them into general things. And you start to see, these groupings. You go, oh, maybe like this person and this person will actually talk about different things. Let's break those out. Or, hey, these kind of problems are actually really similar. Can we aggregate them? And just so much faster you get to these kind of macro problems, and you go, all right, well, how do we solve, right? People figuring out how they want to use all the stuff we offer them in this case. Or, in our end, we were going through and launching our Galileo AI platform back in spring. And as we were trying to figure out what areas do we focus on as a value, how do we phrase it? Like, what's the problem that, how do people talk about the problem that we're solving? Like, what's their phraseology for it? We were able to kind of go, oh, it's not this other way of looking at it. It's that they see that they have a ton of tools that are really hard to go across and understand kind of how all of that impacts the digital experience they're delivering, because it just takes hours to aggregate all this data across these things. That's how we point this as, or that's how we kind of position it as. It's not, some other, it does the same thing, but it also gets into how you talk about your benefits, right? Or in your case, how do you communicate them to your members? It's, what do you want to do? And then showing them how they can best accomplish that.
100%. In our case, there is a question of understanding from users. What do you do when you come to our site? And I think having that good understanding has helped sort of us ideate, again, understanding their needs and delivering against those, rather than just doing kind of what they say. Hey, because people will tell you, you guys need to add more benefits, or something like that. Why'd you lose that benefit? And really, I think you can solve the problem that they're asking for, or you sort of understand what they need and sort of solve it in a different way.
Yeah. And kind of the neat thing here, right, is, and I think we alluded to this briefly, but like it kind of takes a full cycle, is the fact that you were the one kind of hands-on throughout all of this. Like you said, it doesn't erase your VP skills and suddenly you're just doing like menial, the entry level work. It rather, you're able to apply that level of craft to all this and probably get to a better synthesis of what are the things we need to do a lot faster than having to kind of have a 10-person team where you're all kind of going through and you have someone reporting up to you the results from interviews, and you kind of, help them synthesize it or figure out what you're going to do from all this aggregated data. You're in the weeds and up high and able to just do that faster. And so, presents a probably better, faster outcome here where you can really move fast. And this is why you tend to see, I feel like, these kind of small upstart companies moving so incredibly quickly and really just nailing what is going to move the needle with the customers, because like you're the one in there and you have just so much more context now.
100%. Could not have said it better myself. The fact is, because I'm the one aggregating all of this customer info, I'm also the one, conducting a lot of the interviews. Yeah. I feel closer to the customer than I've ever been, or at least that I can think of in a long time. And then using AI to sort of create vision documents for a feature that I want, using AI prototyping tools to actually come up with what this would look like. So I'll use V-Zero or Lovable. I'll upload, pictures of our website, screenshots of our website, say, okay, I want to add this feature at the top in the AI concierge. And then I can put that in my vision document, and that turns into a PRD. And all of this stuff that would have taken me so long, or that I would have been relying on other people. We would have had a zillion meetings. Oh, let's review it. Let's change it. Like, we can move really fast. And, it doesn't mean that we get it right. And I don't think that I'm the single source of truth for like what we should do. So maybe you do lose a little bit in sort of the lack of sort of diverse opinions, because you sort of are trusting one person to sort of drive the insights and the solutioning, but I do feel like, because I have, for example, ChatGPT and an AI prototyping tool, like as my thought partner, and I spend a lot of time, and I actually sit and will talk to ChatGPT. I turn on like the dictation, and I spend a lot of time just talking to it. People will kind of laugh at me and say like, who are you talking to? But now in my office, they know that I'm talking to ChatGPT and go back and forth. So it's not perfect, but I can move really fast and not spend tons of time in alignment meetings because I can move very quickly from customer insight to an actual description of the solution.
Yeah. And one place I found that kind of replaces or helps augment that, the risk around, maybe one train of thought, is because I've made a big push as well to have a lot more customer conversations and talk a lot more in the market with people. And there I've been able to kind of bring up, well, here's kind of how we're looking at doing it. What do you think about this? Is this going to work? Is this interesting? But very quickly, people are very happy to engage with you on like, oh, it should actually be like this or that. And you kind of push back on them. And a lot of those use cases I've been able to, maybe replace the robust internal discussion with what is probably just as good is talking to the actual market to go, oh, you don't like that? Why not? But I would, but I think other people will like it because of this. And oftentimes people will go, yeah, this part of the market's going to like it. This part's not. And you can get there pretty quickly that way as well.
Yeah, and you don't have to talk to a million people. You come up
Right.
with a solution and put it in front of 5 people, and you'll probably get 3 different responses, and that'll probably be good enough to give you sort of a go, no go, or help you if you need to sort of pivot your design a little bit. And we've done some of that, and we've done some, I built the quant survey and SurveyMonkey that took me probably longer than I needed to, but getting that feedback is really important before you go and build something.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had a woman named Alo Mukherjee on, she's SVP of product over at US Bank. And she has this theory around what she calls the rule of 5, which basically it is a step function increase, kind of practice of talking to customers. But her first step is always kind of talk to 5 people. And if you see kind of across 5 people a really heavy preference for all the same thing, or like a strong opinion about one thing that kind of spans those people, you can feel pretty confident that you have high signal that that's
Absolutely.
a really good way. And now you kind of narrow your focus on the next group of people you talk to. If you talk to 5 people and they all say different things, you gotta go back to the drawing board, man. Like you're still off base here. So it's interesting to kind of see all this practice from really smart people who I've talked to kind of coalesce around some of these things to how do you do this? It makes a lot of sense. So I do want to kind of get a little bit more tactical here. As much as we talked about, you have really, big impact. And I do love the AI kind of chat discovery, because I think that's a big, large piece about how do you kind of move the breadth of the company forward. But you and I got to sync up a little bit before we actually jumped on. And there was this test you were able to run. It lifted like 50% conversion rate on a key revenue page. And I think that's another thing is everyone's still always a sucker for a good growth story. 50% is a lot. Like 5% usually people are happy about, 20% people are stoked about. 50% is ridiculous. So let's do it. What's this one?
This one, it still makes me laugh. I feel like there was a giant element of luck in this, but
it usually is for 50%. Like,
right. And I'll tell you, this page was our core monetization page where when somebody signs up for a trial, we show them a really strong offer, but it's kind of where somebody can make a decision whether they want to go straight to the paid product or if they want to just continue on the free trial. The paid product gives them, the value for what we charge is outstanding. And so there's sort of this decision point for our users. And this page had been tested 15 different ways with sort of modern designs, but the page had sort of been kind of stagnant for about 7 or 8 years before. And I think, we had an objective of, driving more conversion on the page and also doing more of like a UI uplift because the page design was a little dated. I spent a good amount of time in V-Zero just sort of testing out different ways of running this page, and also was using ChatGPT to sort of think about what are the elements that might be most important in a user's decision at this critical point where they're deciding like, do I want to pay money for more or just keep going? And I think some of the insights that we generated were, people care a lot about what other people think. So testimonials, which, I always had like love-hate relationship with testimonials because you sort of are like, these are very like curated. But for a product like ours, where the value may not be completely clear to somebody up front, because it's a lot more about like, hey, sign up and then you're going to be able to save money here, here, and here. We actually pushed some testimonials further up the page that really spoke to the value of the product and how people could save, hundreds or thousands of dollars. We did do sort of a UI refresh. And then through that process, we tested a new iteration of the page, and yes, literally saw almost a 50% improvement in our conversion there. which drove our CAC down substantially, which also helps us fuel growth because then we can reinvest that in the business and keep kind of fueling the growth of the company. I mean, really, really one that I'm still excited about. We've had a lot of testing success using AI and using these prototyping tools to help kind of generate ideas and test things out. So that was a fun one.
We had years ago a large blog for front end engineers, and we were testing a bunch of kind of conversion optimization stuff. And we kind of lucked into a similar thing where we were trying some different creatives, and finally our growth leader said, you know what, we should just for the sake of completeness and doing a real test here, we should have a null version where we remove this kind of additional CTA that has just always been on the site. And oddly enough, the cleaner one without that CTA on it did the best. We still had another one kind of at the top and one at the bottom, but that mid one, it turns out, was actually really negatively impacting somehow conversion. We reran it like 3 times to make sure, and every single time it was the same. And kind of where we finally landed was maybe a little bit similar to the thinking hypothesis of why it might work here, is doing that made it feel more authentic when people actually hit where the CTA should be, and developers can be a little touchy about that. Maybe it seemed a little bit more natural or whatever it was, but it's always fun to find those little locked in huge gains.
So one of the ways that I think I've been scalable in our testing program, because I think anybody that's done a ton of testing knows that can be very time consuming. You're sort of generating hypotheses, you're coming up with designs, and some of them are going to be, CTA tests, hero banner tests, reorganizing the order of the page. One of the decisions that I made after I'd been there for about a month is to hire a specialized conversion optimization firm.
Mm-hmm.
So we hired one of those that, they charge you sort of a monthly fee, but they give you a little bit of like arms and legs to sort of help you on ideation. That was something that I hadn't done that type of thing before, but I found been very powerful, sort of helping me from a scalability perspective, drive, more impact and increase our test velocity. We're launching a couple tests a week, which, may not sound like a lot to certain people, but when you're going from, one a month to, a couple a week, like you do need a little extra leverage. So that has been a powerful add as well.
I mean, if you can find the right agency or the right kind of partnership there, that can be really high leverage if you're not, hiring on dedicated people, especially if you don't have a full person of work worth of stuff there. It's a good way to kind of like get a lot of that done, but to the point of you can be in the weeds, but maybe there's some things you don't need to be that in the weeds on, like actually building the test iterations or something like that. Okay. I do, we've talked about this a lot, but I think it is important to recognize, like, this is not, some background of yours where you have been at these tiny little companies over and over and over again, and you just have, this huge background in being the guy or being the person who kind of comes in and, leads vision as well as getting it done, which I think some people kind of look at and go, well, that's the model I like. And people often feel like I do big companies or I do small companies. But you were at some of the most, Amex, which is one of the most massive companies you can be at. You were at a company called Alight. And this is actually interesting because, it's kind of the contra to a small company is you were brought in at Alight to kind of help them through the IPO process, which is the antithesis of a 15-person company, and kind of help them get on track and really get ready for a successful run here. So let's just run through the quick version of that story real fast.
Yeah. So I'm not all hands-on tactical product leader. I do have some.
You can do pure vision sometimes.
Yeah. I had been at Amex for 10 years, made a VP, but I think I was looking for a new challenge, and Alight, which is in the HR tech space, was a really interesting challenge. They had tried to go public maybe 6 months before they'd filed their S1, maybe 6 months before I got there. They did not get the valuation that they were looking for. They were sort of being viewed as a business process outsourcing company instead of like a SaaS tech company. And so they were very keen to invest in their technology. And so they hired me to run their digital product team. And so I was there to kind of help them build out their digital product strategy. Didn't really have a super clear vision at the time. They were having some ARR compression from their different clients. And so my mission was sort of develop that product strategy, the roadmap, and try and, get them to this IPO. And so essentially what I did was I led sort of cross-functional work stream with a lot of the senior leadership at the company. It was also during COVID. So we were sort of sitting in rooms very far apart from each other and trying to align on a strategy. And, I think Part of it was identifying what wasn't working. So the mobile app was sort of an underutilized resource. So we really focused there. We also focused on AI and how do we drive more personalization to end users. And, through a lot of, regular product processes around discovery and design and testing, we actually built a kind of a new face of their digital platform that was called the Alight Work-Life Platform. And not only that, I was heavily involved in pivoting their go-to-market strategy, which had been aligned around their business units, health, wealth, and payroll, and turned their kind of go-to-market positioning much more about delivering employee engagement and value through the tech platform. And so, we did a lot of testing with clients around what this value proposition would look like. And ultimately, through a lot of the efforts of our team, we were able to kind of stem this ARR loss that we were having. We won a few, giant new clients, which hadn't been the case so much prior. And that Alight Work-Life Platform that I was kind of the architect for ended up being sort of the centerpiece of the IPO. And so that kind of became a lot of our messaging through the IPO. And then we did go public back in 2021. So that was a very proud moment for me.
It's interesting because a lot of companies will often see themselves as software companies. And in reality, if you can be software assisted services, you can, but that's the risk here, right? Is software companies, because of, the ability to have pretty high margin, almost zero opportunity cost for adding new licenses, aside from just whatever the compute cost of your customers using it. It's very different than any kind of services org or outsourcing, where you were kind of bound by human capacity to do work while you offer revenue driving subscriptions. And so, here that ended up kind of biting them in the butt a little bit, where the multiplier was just not there. And what I think is cool here is you guys were doing AI before AI was cool. A lot of this was around, how do you answer questions automatically? How do you automate? How do you create better experiences for employees by having a place where they can get these answers, and without, having to have humans who are scale bound to do that?
Yeah, I will say, and shout out to Ibrahim Khouri from my team over there. We had a phenomenal chatbot. Like, even that chatbot was very underutilized, but that was sort of the old school model of AI, which
Right.
you had to like script all of your answers, and there was a ton of manual testing and looking at what, but we had a very good success rate on the sort of correctness of the answers. It was over 90%. But yes, that was part of it. There was also just personalizing communications to end users. There was a big aspect of using AI to make recommendations to employers on changes they might want to make in terms of how they manage their company benefits, because we had this giant data set. Alight was, and I presume still is, serves about 2/3 of the Fortune 100 companies. So they have this very broad data set. They have 30 million end users on the platform in terms of how other companies are offering benefits and patterns on how much leave people take and salaries and all this kind of stuff, that we were able to sort of take some of that AI and power that in terms of recommendations to employers that made our offering a lot more high value than kind of, yes, we will just be a connector for all of your kind of company HR portals, which is sort of a little bit kind of, I think, how we were perceived before.
Right. And 2021 went public via SPAC. In 22, revenue grew pretty heavily. You were at billions of dollars already and grew almost 10% to over 3. And then just like 2023 grew again. So like a good series. It's not like it was an IPO that suddenly just like, didn't work out. There was great growth afterwards, and the stock price grew. There was increase in revenue. The segment was a good one. So it seems like it did really well. All right. As much as I love to talk about AI, as much as I love to talk about how people have developed these cool companies and really, done interesting things, I do have to give you part of your day back here, Michael. It was nice of you to join.
Yeah, really love the conversation.
I think, typically what I'll say is, if people have questions, if people think they can either be helpful to you, especially over at FoundersCard, or if they have questions for you, is LinkedIn the best place to reach out? Is there another spot?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is great. So yeah, please reach out. We are hiring. We got a PM role and a couple design roles at the moment. So I think that trend will continue. So yeah, shoot me a note on LinkedIn.
Nice. And so you are hiring. So PMs, check it out. High impact work. But, sorry to say, Michael, it seems like you guys are not going to be the first single person billion-dollar company. You pass that up now, but
I was giving.
I don't know if I'd want to work at a single person billion-dollar company though.
I think
that seems lonely.
Well, to me, I care a lot about company culture and camaraderie and sort of building things together and pressure testing my ideas and debating what we should do. And I feel like that would be hard at at a one person billion-dollar company. Kudos to anybody that can do that, but that may not be for me.
Yeah, I like lean, but that seems a little too lean. So, all right, man. Well, it's good to have you on the show. Thanks for
so much,
joining us,
Jeff.
Michael, and keep in touch.
All
awesome.
right,
Talk soon. Bye.
Okay, bye.